This court finds the defendant, Nia Carter, guilty. Silence fell over Department 2. Nia, 17, honor roll and soft-spoken, stared at the bench. The bailiff's hand hovered at her elbow. Her mother, Vanessa, crushed a tissue into a hard square. Judge Ronald Keaton didn't look at Nia when he spoke about her. He looked past her. Youth who disrespect authority do not belong in honors programs, he lectured. They belong in programs that correct behavior. Vanessa rose. Your Honor, the video, please. There is a video. Inadmissible, Keaton snapped. Chain of custody is compromised. Sit down or be held in contempt. He flicked his gaze to the bailiff. Metal touched bone. The cuffs whispered shut. Attorney Jasmine Lee stood at counsel table. For the record, she said, steady, the school footage corroborates Ms. Carter's account. She was attacked first. The principal failed to report it. Before we continue, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and comment the city you're watching from. It helps us bring more real stories like this one. Keaton did not ask to see the footage. Remand is appropriate. 90 days in county juvenile detention pending dispositional review, he said, as if ordering toner. He squared his files. Nia's legs shook. She thought of the science fair next week, the hallway where the shove happened, the hissed slur, the hands at her backpack straps, the way she pushed back on instinct because folding felt worse. Mom, she said, a breath. Two deputies moved to block Vanessa. Please, she said to no one and everyone. She reads to our neighbor's little girl on Thursdays. She's never even missed curfew. By the door, 2 U.S. Marshals exchanged a look that wasn't about Nia. A radio on one shoulder crackled, a clipped voice under static. The taller marshal glanced at a folded document inside his jacket, sealed, stamped. He tapped the other on the sleeve. Not yet. If stories like this matter, the narrator threads through the stillness. Tap subscribe and tell us your city. Jasmine tried once more. Your Honor, stay remand 24 hours to allow review of evidence filed this morning. You will not tell this court how to calendar, Keaton said. Remand is immediate. His gavel hovered, then fell. The bailiff reached for Nia's arm. She felt the tug, the small indignity of being guided like she had forgotten how to walk. Her cheeks burned. Jasmine leaned close, head high, breathe. Nia lifted her chin and found, past the fluorescent glare, the marshals again. Two men who were not audience and not here for her at all. Their eyes were on the bench. The radio crackled a second time, clearer now. As Keaton gathered his folders to stand, the back doors opened. A third marshal stepped in with a badge out and a thick packet. The gavel's vibrations still trembled in the wood when the taller marshal said, not loud but final, "Counsel, remain in place." In that breath between orders, the room understood. The handcuffs meant for a teenager might be headed somewhere else. 2 weeks before the verdict, the day had started like any other at East Ridge High. Nia Carter stood at her locker with a folder tucked under her arm, scrolling through notes on her phone. She had a presentation in AP Biology, that morning one she'd practiced for all week. Her future, she often thought, lived in small details. The neat spiral of her handwriting, the highlighted key terms, the way her mom's tired smile lifted when she brought home straight A's. Then came the shove. Her phone slipped, clattering on the floor. 2 voices followed, sneering, nasal. Too loud for the quiet hallway before first period. Move it, scholarship queen, one girl jeered. Don't block real students. Nia's breath caught. These weren't strangers. Madison and Brooks seniors with perfect hair and perfect records had been circling her for months. Slurs disguised as jokes, whispers behind her back in the cafeteria, rumors seeded like weeds in classrooms where teachers pretended not to hear. Today, they didn't whisper. Madison pressed a hand against Nia's shoulder, pinning her to the locker. What's in there? Answers you stole? Brooke laughed. The words stung sharper than the shove. Nia bent for her phone. Another shove. Her folder spilled colored tabs and flashcards scattering like leaves. A chorus of laughter rippled from a few onlookers, the kind of laughter that makes silence complicit. Something inside her snapped. She shoved back hard enough to break the script of who was supposed to cower. Madison stumbled, caught herself, and immediately clutched her elbow with theatrical whimpering. She hit me! Phones were out in seconds. Clips that showed the push but not the slur, not the shove, not the folder on the floor. Evidence cut to frame her as aggressor. Principal Miller arrived, late and already frowning. Nia Carter, my office, now. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask why her notes lay strewn across the hall. He only saw Madison dabbing fake tears with a tissue Brooke offered. In the cramped office, Vanessa arrived minutes later, still in scrubs from the overnight shift at the hospital. Her eyes darted from her daughter's clenched fists to the principal's crossed arms. My child was attacked, she insisted. You can't suspend her for defending herself. She escalated it, Miller replied. School policy is clear, 0 tolerance. But there's video, Vanessa said. Students recorded the whole thing. Social media clips are not admissible in school disciplinary hearings, Miller said flatly. Vanessa leaned forward, voice low with restrained fury. So a black girl's word means nothing against 2 white cheerleaders. The principal didn't flinch. He filled out the suspension form, slid it across the desk, and avoided Vanessa's eyes. Hours later, 2 officers showed up at their doorstep with a summons, assault charges, words that didn't fit Nia's life. Girls like you don't belong in honors programs anyway, one officer muttered as he clicked the pen against the citation. That night, Nia sat at the kitchen table with untouched dinner in front of her. Vanessa scrolled through her phone, showing her the clip again, the shove, the flashcards scattering, the pushback. This proves it, Vanessa whispered. We'll show the court. They can't ignore this. But when they arrived at the preliminary hearing, Judge Keaton refused to admit the video. Chain of custody compromised, he ruled, dismissing the footage before anyone could explain. This court will not be swayed by biased recordings. The words hit Vanessa like a hammer. She pressed Nia's hand under the table. Jasmine Lee, their young attorney, leaned forward. We'll fight this, she whispered. But you need to brace yourselves. This judge, he's known for making examples. Nia's eyes dropped to the chains waiting on the bailiff's desk. Her stomach twisted, not just with fear, but with the sickening realization that in this room, the truth alone wasn't enough. And outside, in the gallery, the U.S. Marshals sat in silence, watching, waiting. The courtroom smelled of old wood polish and authority. Portraits of long-dead judges lined the walls, their eyes fixed downward as though passing judgment from the past. Nia sat at the defense table, hands folded so tightly her knuckles whitened. Every squeak of the judge's leather chair echoed like thunder in her chest. Judge Ronald Keaton adjusted his glasses, peered over the rim, and fixed his gaze on her. Miss Carter, he began, his tone dripping with disdain, your conduct reflects a troubling disregard for order and respect. This community expects better. Nia's attorney, Jasmine Lee, rose. Your Honor, with respect, this community also expects fairness. The evidence is inadmissible, Keaton cut her off. His gavel struck once, sharp, final. I will not tolerate attempts to muddy the court with doctored videos or fabricated stories. They're not fabricated, Jasmine pressed, her voice firm but respectful. Multiple eyewitnesses confirm Nia was attacked first, yet the prosecution has chosen not to call them. If you won bin procestes, Keaton leaned back, smirk tugging at his lips. Perhaps those witnesses lacked credibility. Perhaps they did not wish to perjure themselves. Vanessa's breath caught. You didn't even let them speak, she burst out from the second row. The judge's eyes snapped to her like a hawk spotting prey. One more outburst and I will have you removed. Contempt carries jail time, Mrs. Carter. Do not test this court. Vanessa sank back, trembling, clutching her purse like a lifeline. The prosecutor, a man in a navy suit who had barely spoken all morning, shuffled his papers with mechanical indifference. The state rests, Your Honor. We believe the evidence of assault is clear. Clear. The word clanged in Nia's ears. Clear like the phone video ignored. Clear like the swelling on her arm from being shoved into lockers. Clear like the smirk on Madison's face when she walked into court with her parents, whispering something smug in the gallery. Jasmine stood again. Your Honor, before you consider sentencing, I ask permission to call one more witness, Principal Miller. Keaton's gavel slammed down harder this time. Denied. This court is not a circus for parading excuses. But he can verify. Denied, Keaton barked. His face flushed red as his hand gripped the arm of the chair. The gallery murmured. People shifted, whispers weaving like threads of doubt. The marshals by the door did not move, but their eyes flickered toward the bench. They had heard this tone before, not the tone of law, but of a man used to unchecked power. Jasmine's jaw tightened. She leaned down to Nia. No matter what happens, remember you are not guilty. This process is guilty. Nia blinked rapidly, fighting tears. She thought of her future, slipping like water through her fingers, college brochures at home on the kitchen counter, her acceptance letter waiting. Would it all end here, in this suffocating room where truth bent under the weight of one man's prejudice? Judge Keaton shuffled his papers theatrically. Miss Carter, it is the opinion of this court that your behavior, though disguised as self-defense, demonstrates aggression unbecoming of a young lady. Therefore, the gavel hovered in his hand, anticipation hanging like smoke. I hereby sentence you to the maximum allowable term in juvenile detention. The words struck like a hammer blow. Vanessa let out a cry that shattered the tense silence. Nia felt her chest hollow, her ears ringing with disbelief. Jasmine slammed her folder shut, fury blazing behind her calm expression. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even some who had come expecting guilt murmured now, shifting uncomfortably at the judge's blatant bias. Phones lifted discreetly, screens recording, thumbs tapping, evidence building outside the record Keaton tried to control. In the corner, the marshals shifted. One leaned toward the other, muttering beneath the hum of whispers. Their eyes flicked to the clock, to the sealed folder one of them carried, and then back to Keaton, who sat high above, smug in the power he believed untouchable. The gavel dropped, the echo carrying longer than before. Court is adjourned. But in the stillness that followed, the tension didn't break. It thickened because some in that room knew the judge's sentence wasn't the final word. The sound of the gavel had barely faded when the taller marshal stepped forward. All rise, he commanded, not for the judge, but for what came next. His voice carried an authority that bent the air. The courtroom froze. Judge Keaton blinked, confused by the marshal's tone. He adjusted his robe as if to reassert control. This court is adjourned, he repeated, sharper. Remove the defendant. But the marshals didn't move toward Nia. They moved toward him. From his jacket, the taller marshal withdrew a thick folder stamped with a federal seal. He handed it to his partner, then raised his voice for the record. Pursuant to a sealed indictment issued by the United States District Court, Judge Ronald Keaton, you are hereby placed under arrest. The gallery erupted. Gasps, shouts, the rustle of bodies leaning forward. Vanessa clutched Nia's hand so tightly their knuckles blended white against brown. Jasmine's eyes widened, then sharpened into something like vindication. Keaton's face flushed crimson. What nonsense is this? I am the presiding authority in this courtroom. You have no jurisdiction here. The shorter marshal stepped forward. Sir, the indictment charges you with conspiracy, bribery, and violation of civil rights under color of law. His voice was steady, practiced, as though reading lines he had rehearsed. Whispers surged through the gallery. A reporter slipped out the back, phone already raised to her ear. Madison and Brooke's parents exchanged panicked glances, unsure if they should shield their daughters from what was unfolding. Keaton slammed his gavel against the bench, but the sound lacked its usual weight. This is outrageous. These proceedings are fabricated. You can't remove me. The taller marshal didn't flinch. You are accused of accepting bribes from the Hartwell Corrections Corporation. Vanessa's head jerked up. Private prisons, she whispered, realization flooding in. In exchange for sentencing disproportionate numbers of minority youths to their facilities, the marshal finished. The words crashed through the courtroom like thunder. Every detail of Nia's rushed trial suddenly snapped into place. The way evidence was dismissed, the way witnesses were silenced, the way Keaton's gavel fell so quickly, without care for truth. Keaton sputtered. Lies, smears from political enemies. He shuffled his papers as though they might shield him. I have served this bench for 30 years. But the marshals weren't finished. The shorter one lifted another document. Financial records showed deposits into an offshore account coinciding with high-volume sentencing weeks. Multiple juveniles were remanded under questionable rulings, disproportionately Black and Latino. Your docket has been under surveillance for over a year. Gasps cut through the gallery again. Mothers reached for their sons. Fathers shook their heads, eyes blazing with anger. The injustice that had lived as whispers in the community now stood exposed, undeniable. Jasmine's lips curved into a small, fierce smile. She leaned down to Nia. This isn't about you anymore. It never was. It's about everyone he's broken. Keaton's mask cracked. Sweat glistened at his temple. He rose from the bench, robe swishing like a cloak, trying to tower above the marshals. I will not be humiliated in my own courtroom. But the taller marshal met his gaze. "With respect, sir, this courtroom doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the law." The gallery erupted in applause, murmurs, tears, raw emotions spilling after years of quiet suspicion. The marshals moved in closer, one at each side of the bench. Keaton's hands fluttered in panic, clutching the gavel like a weapon. "Don't you touch me. I am a judge of the superior court." The taller marshal spoke low, calm but unyielding. "Not anymore." Hands seized Keaton's arms. The gavel clattered to the floor, rolling across the wood until it struck the base of the witness stand. The sound, small yet final, echoed louder than any verdict he had ever rendered. Nia watched, breath caught in her throat, as the man who tried to chain her was himself surrounded, his wrists gripped, his robe wrinkling under hands trained to restrain. For the first time that day, her chest loosened. The power in the room had shifted. Keaton's voice rose, desperate, cracking. "This is political. You people don't understand what's at stake." Without order. But no one listened. The gallery's murmurs grew louder, bolder. Phones filmed every moment. The judge who silenced voices for decades could no longer silence anyone. And when the cuffs finally clicked around his wrists, a stunned silence returned. In that silence, Nia realized the truth. The system had tried to bury her, but in its greed and corruption, it had buried him instead. The air in the courtroom seemed to thicken as the handcuffs snapped shut. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then, like a dam breaking, voices surged, gasps, whispers, even laughter at the irony, too sharp to ignore. Judge Ronald Keaton, who minutes earlier condemned a teenager without hesitation, now twisted against the steel at his wrists. His robe bunched awkwardly at his elbows as he struggled, no longer dignified but desperate. "This is illegal," he shouted. His voice, once commanding, cracked under strain. "I am the court. You cannot do this to me." The taller marshal gripped his arm firmly, guiding him down from the bench. "Sir, you are under arrest. Any further resistance will be met with force." The gallery rose to its feet, phones lifted high to capture the spectacle. Reporters whispered furiously into recorders. Mothers clutched their children, tears in their eyes not for Keaton, but for the years of injustice finally exposed. Nia sat frozen, watching the scene as if it belonged to someone else's story. The same gavel that had struck against her name lay abandoned on the floor, mute. She felt her mother's hand slip into hers, warm and trembling. Vanessa whispered, "Do you see, baby? Do you see what truth does?" Keaton resisted again, jerking his shoulder back, his robe snagging on the railing of the bench. "I have allies. I will be reinstated." But the marshals pressed him forward, forcing him to descend the same steps Nia had climbed earlier, trembling to plead her innocence. The reversal struck everyone in the room like lightning. The authority who sat above all, now forced to stand at the defendant's level, cuffed like the countless souls he had condemned. Jasmine Lee, steady at the defense table, rose with quiet dignity. "For the record," she said, voice strong, "justice has finally been served in this courtroom." A wave of applause rippled through the gallery, cautious at first, then swelling as people realized no gavel could silence them now. Keaton stumbled as the marshals pushed him past Nia. His eyes darted toward her, searching for pity, but all he found was calm resolve. For the first time, Nia wasn't the one trembling. She was steady, and he was undone. Her mother leaned forward, speaking low enough for only Nia to hear. "Remember this moment. Chains don't define us. They define the ones who earned them." Keaton tried to speak, but his words drowned under the gallery's murmur. "Consequences," finally. As the marshals pulled him toward the door, he erupted in one last outburst. "This is a mistake. You'll regret this." His voice was shrill, stripped of authority. "I was protecting order." The shorter marshal paused just long enough to look him in the eye. "You weren't protecting order. You were selling it." The words hung in the air like a gavel strike louder than any before. The marshals dragged Keaton toward the exit, his footsteps echoing against the hardwood floor. The cameras flashed, capturing his hunched posture, the cuffs glinting under fluorescent lights. He looked smaller now, stripped not only of his robe, but of the power it once gave him. Gasps turned to cheers as the doors closed behind him. For the first time, the courtroom felt like it belonged to the people again. Nia exhaled, shoulders slumping as if shedding a weight too heavy for her young frame. Her mother pulled her into an embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're free," Vanessa whispered. "It's over." Jasmine stepped closer, her expression softening. "No, Mrs. Carter," she corrected gently. "This is the beginning, because every ruling he gave will now be questioned. Every child he sentenced may finally get justice." The gallery nodded, whispers swelling into talk of appeals, retrials, possibilities that had once felt like dreams. Nia glanced at the witness stand where Madison and Brooke sat pale and silent, their smug expressions wiped away. For once, they had nothing to say. The irony was complete. The judge who claimed Nia needed correction was now the one being escorted to correctional custody. And as the heavy doors closed on Ronald Keaton, the chains rattling like punctuation marks to his downfall, the entire room understood the moral more clearly than any verdict. Power can silence truth for a time, but truth always finds its voice. For a heartbeat after the doors closed on Keaton, the room felt weightless, unmoored from the rules that had crushed it. Then sound returned relief first, then resolve. Jasmine motioned to the clerk. "Your Honor pro tem," she said, addressing the senior judge who had stepped in from chambers. "The defense moves to vacate the adjudication, dismiss all charges with prejudice, and order immediate expungement." The substitute, Judge gray-haired, careful, took the bench with solemn eyes. He glanced at the Marshals' paperwork already logged by the clerk, then at Nia, who sat small and still beside her mother. "Motion granted," he said. "The record shall reflect that the charges against Ms. Carter are dismissed with prejudice. The court further orders expungement and sealing, effective immediately." Vanessa covered her mouth with both hands. The sound she made was part laugh, part sob, the body's way of letting go when it's carried too much for too long. Nia exhaled, finally, the breath she'd been holding since the hallway shove. Jasmine squeezed her shoulder. "You walk out of here clean," she said, "like this never happened on paper." "But it did happen," Nia replied softly, eyes lifted to the witness stand where Madison had sat, "just not forever." In the corridor, reporters waited with microphones and lenses. The Marshals escorted Keaton down a separate hallway, no robe, no gavel, just a man and his wrists in steel, a statement from the U.S. Attorney's office hit inboxes moments later. Charges under 18 U.S.C. Paragraph 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, federal program bribery, honest services fraud. Words that translated, simply, to this: he sold kids to cages. By late afternoon, the story was everywhere. Clips from the courtroom flooded feeds: Keaton's arrest, Vanessa's tears, Nia's steady face. Hashtags trended. Old defendants crawled out of memory and into daylight. Parents called parents. Pastors called attorneys. A bus driver on the South Side told his riders to watch that video, watch what truth can do. At home, the kitchen table looked different that night. Not the wood or the chairs, the weight in the room. Vanessa set down a pot of jollof she'd made between phone calls. She forgot to eat, watching Nia instead. "They can't hurt you anymore," she said, as if rehearsing a line to convince her own heart. "They hurt a lot of people," Nia said. "Maybe this is where it stops." She pulled a stack of college brochures from the fruit bowl where she'd stashed them that morning. She ran a finger over the corner of one, the school she'd dreamed of since 6th grade. It didn't feel hypothetical anymore. Jasmine called from her office, a rapid-fire plan laid out in bullet points. Emergency motions to review Keaton's juvenile docket, a hotline for families who believed their kids had been railroaded. A coalition forming with civil rights groups to comb through transcripts. "If you have the energy, Nia," Jasmine said gently, "your statement could help a lot of kids understand what happened today." "I'll write it," Nia said, "but I want it to be about them, not just me." The school board met in emergency session 2 nights later. The room smelled of coffee and folding chairs, packed with parents and students and a line of local press. Principal Miller sat stiff at the far end of the table, flanked by district counsel. When public comment opened, Vanessa was third in line. She didn't raise her voice. She kept it steady. "My daughter was attacked. She told you. You chose not to hear. Policy is only neutral when the people who wield it are." A murmur of agreement rose and fell. A teacher spoke after her, voice shaking as she admitted what others had been afraid to. "We've all seen the double standards. We can't fix what we refuse to name. By the end of the night..." The board voted to place Miller on administrative leave pending a Title VI investigation and to adopt a new protocol requiring preservation and review of all student-recorded incidents in disciplinary matters. It wasn't everything, but it was a hinge swinging toward better. Madison and Brooke's parents asked to address the room. For once, they didn't come with lawyers. Brooke gripped the dais, eyes rimmed red. "I'm sorry," she said into the microphone, voice barely above a whisper. "We lied. We thought we could." She looked at Nia. "I don't expect forgiveness. I'm sorry." The board issued suspensions and mandated restorative justice sessions. Nia attended one. She spoke when it was her turn, not to excuse what happened, but to name it so it couldn't hide under rules or rumors again. Days layered into a new routine. The DA's office announced a conviction integrity review of Keaton's past cases. Past defendants stood outside the courthouse with manila folders and cautious hope. Jasmine worked late with a rotating crew of volunteers, charting patterns, who got silenced, who got believed, which weeks correlated with the offshore deposits that now read like a schedule of harm. Lawsuits gathered like storm clouds over a summer field. And Nia went back to school. The hallways were the same, lockers still dented, fluorescent lights still too bright. But something had shifted in the gravity of the place. Teachers made space. Kids who had watched and stayed quiet now nodded, hello, small acknowledgments of a courage they hadn't had on the day it counted. In AP Bio, Nia gave the presentation she'd missed, the one about systems and feedback loops and how a small change in one node can transform the whole model. She didn't have to spell out the metaphor. Everyone heard it anyway. A week later, an email arrived from the college with the blue crest. Scholarship confirmed, offer extended, deadline to accept. Vanessa read it twice, then a third time, wiping at tears she didn't try to hide. "I knew," she whispered. "I knew the world would have to make room for you." On a Sunday evening, Nia stood at a small church podium at a community teach-in about youth rights. The sanctuary smelled of old hymnals and lemon oil. Folding fans snapped open and shut in the pews. She told the room what she wished someone had told her. "You are not what a bad day says you are. Document everything. Ask for an adult you trust. And if the system tries to make you small, remember, systems are made of people. They can be remade." The applause was soft at first, then strong. When it faded, the narrator's voice returned, the quiet thread that had led the story from sirens to sunlight. If you want more true stories like this, of harm, named and hope insisted upon, tap, subscribe, drop a comment with your city, and share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Outside, the evening light fell warm across the church steps. Nia and Vanessa lingered there a moment, the day pulling long and gentle. Across town, a former judge slept under a thin blanket on a federal hold, no robe between him and the consequences he'd purchased for others. Somewhere, a clerk pulled another file with his name on the order line and stamped it for review. Somewhere, a kid checked their phone and saw Nia's face, steady and unbroken, and thought, maybe tomorrow I won't fold. Justice didn't come as a single thunderclap. It came the way dawn does, thin at first, then brighter, until even the stubborn shadows had to move. Before you leave, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more stories that reveal truth in unexpected places, and comment the city you're watching from. Your voice matters in keeping these stories alive.